Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we're going to be learning all about New Canaan watersheds. My name is Kathleen Holland. I'm the Director of Inland Wetlands and Watercourses for the town of New Canaan. As we celebrate 50 years of the Connecticut Wetlands and Watercourses Act, I've been asked to read a brief overview and purpose statement regarding the Wetlands Agency before we get into the program. The inland wetlands and watercourses of the state of Connecticut are an indispensable and irreplaceable and fragile natural resource with which the citizens of the state have been endowed. The wetlands and watercourses are an interrelated web of nature essential to an adequate supply of surface and underground water, hydrological stability and control of flooding and erosion, recharging and purification of groundwater, and the existence of many forms of animal, aquatic, and plant life. The preservation and protection of wetlands and watercourses from random, unnecessary, and unregulated uses, disturbances, or destruction is in the public interest and is essential to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of the state. It is therefore the purpose of New Canaan Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency to protect the citizens of the state of Connecticut and the town of New Canaan by making provisions for the protection, preservation, maintenance, and use of the inland wetlands and watercourses. I just want to also mention, in addition to the Inland Wetlands Department tonight, the program is being sponsored by Planet New Canaan, New Canaan Land Trust, and our host this evening is the New Canaan Library. Tonight, we will learn all about New Canaan watersheds from Chris Sullivan. Chris is the Executive Director of the Southwest Conservation District. He will explain what a watershed is, how our actions can have impacts on water quality, and decisions we can make to protect water resources. Chris was with the Water Bureau of the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for 11 years before becoming Executive Director in his current position. It is my pleasure to turn the program over to Chris Sullivan.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. Much appreciated. I hope everybody can hear me all right. I'm gonna share some slides. Hopefully this works. All right. Everybody should be able to see that. Kathleen, can you confirm that there's a blue screen with all about watersheds on your monitor?
Yes.
Awesome. So as Kathleen said, my name is Chris Sullivan. I'm the Executive Director at the Southwest Conservation District. I want to thank the town of New Canaan Land Trust, Planet New Canaan, and the library all for putting this event together and for having me speak today. What I'm going to talk about is very briefly a little bit about the Southwest Conservation District and what we are and where we operate. Then I'm going to go into talking about watersheds, talking about land use and choices we can make, and then also talk about things that everybody can do and make decisions on their properties to help protect water quality and watersheds. I believe that everybody has access to the chat, so there will be time for questions at the end, but if you want to make sure you capture your question, I think you can type it into the chat window as we go. We can circle back to that at the end. So I'm going to just start going through the slides. And let's see. So there are 5 conservation districts in Connecticut. We are in the Southwest, and that area is in the green down here. Hopefully you can see my mouse purple arrow. This is the area we cover. The boundaries are basically based on county lines, but there are some examples where there's actually a watershed boundary that changes that a little bit. We've been around since 1946. We are 501c3 nonprofit, and we do a lot of work with municipal staff, private land use owners, land trusts, agricultural producers, and also a lot of work with education in schools. So just a zoom in of where we work. It's Fairfield and New Haven County. We do pick up Southington for the Quinnipiac River watershed, and we don't have Danbury because it flows north. The Still River flows north in that area. So we otherwise it's those county rivers. And this is our staff. I'm the executive director. There's me filling up some samples in some river somewhere in Connecticut. And then my coworker, Melissa Mostaway, is the natural resource specialist for us. There is pictures, her and her husband pulling water chestnut and bagging it in a canoe in one of the ponds in our service area. So we're always outside doing natural resource work and conservation work throughout our service area. So this is the big question of what we're going to talk about tonight. What is a watershed? There's some images here. Basically, a watershed is an area of land where all of the water within that land drains to a common outlet or a common point. Those boundaries are set up by topography and geology in the land. It's not set by state lines or town lines or anything else drawn on a map like that. The way that I like to think about what a watershed is that it's like a bathtub, right? So if you're pouring water into your bathtub, anywhere in the tub, it goes to the drain. So that's the outlet of that of your tub, which would be like the outlet of a watershed. If you turn your shower and spray it on your bathroom floor, it no longer goes to the drain in your bathtub. It's on the watershed of your bathroom floor now, and you have a mess to clean up. So again, watersheds are an area of land where all the water that falls in precipitation or from any other streams goes to a common point at the end. So I'm going to go through a series of maps for Connecticut, kind of detailing the different types of watersheds, the different naming of watersheds. And basic thing you want to remember is there are really large watersheds, and then there are smaller and smaller watersheds within those large watersheds. So I'm going to work at some of the biggest level in Connecticut, and then I'm going to zoom all the way down into New Canaan with this series of maps. So the first boundaries I'm going to show you are the major boundaries, and you should still be able to see my mouse. This big pink, very tall, squiggly line is the Housatonic Major Watershed. So any rain or snow that falls in here, all the little streams and ponds within this area, they all end up flowing to the Housatonic River and then all the way down here at the tip into Long Island Sound. So over here in the green box, this is New Canaan. If it rains in New Canaan, that water will not go into the Housatonic Watershed. So the next couple slides are going to get a little bit messier because we're going to start showing some smaller watershed boundaries. The next level was the regional watersheds, and these are still pretty large areas, and they're all within different those major watersheds that I mentioned earlier. So the Housatonic main stem has things like the Aspetuck, the Chippewa, the Pomperaug, the Naugatuck. These are all the regional watersheds. So the water that rains there goes to the Naugatuck, which then connects to the Housatonic, which then connects to Long Island Sound. And again, New Canaan is this green box in the southwestern complex is what this watershed is called for the Connecticut watershed naming. So if we get even smaller watersheds, they're called subregionals. We're going to zoom in and get rid of most of Connecticut and focus on that southwest regional area. Again, this green box is New Canaan. And you can see there's lots of little lines inside of here. And these darker purple lines are those sub-regional watersheds. And this lighter pink line is that southwest regional watershed that we talked about, that southwest complex. All these purple spaces take over land and flow water into the southwest. And all that water flows into Long Island Sound down here at the shoreline. So when we get even smaller watersheds, we're going to zoom in on New Canaan. So green box is New Canaan. We've got the purple lines are the subregional watersheds, and you can see that they go right through that New Canaan town boundary. Doesn't matter what that line is as far as the water is concerned. These little pink polygons are this local basin. So these are the smallest watersheds that Connecticut recognizes. And I put this little blue circle here, and that little blue circle is to show where there's a little point in the pink. So all the water in this pink polygon goes to this little triangle in pink and then flows into, and this is the 5 Mile River, which then flows down the shoreline through Canaan. So again, there's really large watersheds or major watersheds. There's smaller ones within those called regional watersheds. smaller areas of land within the regionals called subregionals. And these very small pink areas are our local watersheds or local basins. So just to highlight the sub-regional watersheds that are in New Canaan, again, green box shows us the New Canaan town line. In New Canaan, we have the Mill River is in the northwest corner of your town. The Rippewam flows past that and into Stamford. And you can see these dotted lines are where the watershed continues after it leaves New Canaan. The Norotan flows through the southwest corner of your town. Very small section, and this is called the headwaters, or where the watershed starts of the Darien River. The 5 Mile River flows right through the center of your town. And then the Silvermine River flows on the eastern edge of New Canaan and actually ends up going into the Norwalk. So those are your sub-regional watersheds. And again, all the rivers in your town end up flowing into Long Island Sound is their largest receiving water. And again, there's those smaller local basins, which now are added to the map. These were the ones that were pink before. You can see the 5 Mile River is this blue line, and here's that little tip that I highlighted out. So that's where the water's flowing from that local basin. So now that we know that a watershed is an area of land, the land use in those watersheds is really important to consider in terms of water quality and what's happening there. Now, in land use, in developed areas, there's impervious surfaces. And what that land is water where the rain that falls doesn't infiltrate. It's not pervious. It doesn't allow water to enter into the ground. It flows off as runoff into surface water bodies, into our stormwater systems. And oftentimes this runoff contains something called non-point source pollution, because as the water flows across the surfaces, it picks up anything that's on the ground. Could be sand and sediment, salt from road salting, oil from a leaky car, and we go into some of those other things that's non-point source pollution. But the next thing I'm going to show you is just how much land use affect what happens to the water when it rains on a certain type of land. So these next series of images is a 3 centimeter precipitation event. So 3 centimeters of rain is going to fall into, in this instance, a developed, medium developed area. So this would be like a dense residential area, maybe some condominiums or townhouses. You can see there's a little bit of grass in the back, some parking lot. And these arrows are telling us what happens to the water. The yellow arrow is flowing down into the ground as infiltration. The red arrow is runoff as surface runoff. And then the blue is the evapotranspiration, so water going back into the air. So you can see in this residential area, a lot of this red is flowing off. A decent amount is infiltrating and some is going back up into the atmosphere. Now, if we change this to a dense residential or densely developed area, so it could be an industrial lot, it could be a dense commercial area like a shopping center, we have a lot more of that impervious surface. And in this case, it's still a 3 centimeter storm. 2 centimeters of that is running off the surface. Only 1 centimeter is infiltrating. So if we go back one, it's going to show us that that number was 1.6 infiltrating, and now only 1 infiltrating and no water evapotranspirates. So it's all running off. And this is because our stormwater system is set up to make water move off of these paved surfaces very quickly. And I have one more example in this model. This is a forested area. So very different than the previous 2 examples, all grass, trees. This looks like maybe a little wetland in the center. No water is running off. Almost all of it, this yellow, is infiltrating into the ground. It's going to flow slowly to a water body, and the groundwater is actually getting cleaned as it flows through the soil. A lot of the potential contaminants and nutrients get stuck to the soil and stay there. So infiltrating the water is the best thing for our rainwater to do. It recharges our streams and our reservoirs. So remember, going through these 3, the heavy developed industrial area was almost all runoff. This non-developed forested area is no runoff when there's a rain event. This is another image to try to drive that concept home, because not all watersheds are created equal, not all land uses are created equal when it comes to what happens with our stormwater runoff. So again, paved city area, most of the water is running off, 55%. In a forested area, only 10% is running off. A lot more is infiltrating. So, and these are images from the EPA. Now, we talked about land use and its impact. I hinted at it a little bit. It's really important because of the non-point source pollution. And again, that's things that get picked up by surface flows when it's raining or snowmelt even in the winter. So fertilizer in the ground, herbicides, insecticides, oil and grease from leaky cars in your parking lot, sediment if there's construction site or just a lot of exposed soil, salt from your road safety, bacteria. It can be carried to surface water as non-point source pollution. And this is actually the bacteria, could be from pet waste. And we have a nice image here, clean up your pet waste. This is the bacteria that closes your beaches in the summer after rain events, and why you shouldn't go swimming then. So this is why it's important that we have less of that stormwater runoff from the non-point source pollution, because it's just picking up everything off the ground and flushing it into our water bodies. And as I said earlier, not every watershed is created equal. Some watersheds are actually in source water areas. This is really important because this is where our drinking water comes from. Could be in surface reservoirs, could be in well fields for groundwater pumping. And what can be done here is this forested land is actually going to protect the water flowing into the reservoir. And the links in this slide are actually some studies that can show you that purchasing this land and protecting it as open space is much more cost effective than trying to treat and clean the water at a treatment plant in your municipality. And then the second link is some more benefits of from an EPA document of that healthy watershed and cleaning the surface water going into our drinking water sources. So in New Canaan, a lot of the drinking water comes from aquarium, from reservoirs and wells, some pipelines. So what I got this image from their website, and the green is aquarium drinking water supply. This black line going down the middle is the boundary between New Canaan and Stamford. And you can see that the surface water flows are going to flow in this southerly direction into the North Stamford Reservoir, which is one of the drinking water supplies for New Canaan. So the water flows what's called down gradient into that reservoir, crosses a town border, because again, watersheds don't care about town boundaries, and then is pumped back to you to have it come out of your sinks or your showers in your home. So the land use where you live is directly connecting to the surface water quality of that reservoir. So there's a lot of things that you can do to help keep your local water bodies clean. I'm sure everybody has seen these structures alongside the road. These are called storm drains or catch basins. I mentioned these earlier. These are set up so that our roads don't flood during rain events. It's trying to move the water very quickly off of the road, out of a parking lot, into the nearest water body. Now, what's important to note is there is no treatment to that water. It's this graded hole in the ground, in the road. The water goes through a pipe and it empties right into a stream or pond or a wetland nearby. During a rain event, if you're walking around and you see a storm drain on a pipe, the pipe will flow right under the bridge or road crossing into a stream. There's no treatment. So what you can do to help protect water quality, don't dump things down the drain. You know, if you walk a dog, don't put your dog waste down there. If you're changing the oil on your car or other mechanic work, don't dump it down the drain. Don't drain anything else to these storm drains. There's no treatment. You might as well just be dumping something right into the river. So that's a fairly easy thing that everybody can do to improve water quality in their neighborhoods. Some other things that can be done, maybe on your property, can also be considered for developments in a municipality. These are some examples where water from a paved area, so these roads, in the image on the left, it's actually a cut. This is called a curb cut. And so the water flowing on this road or sidewalk actually allows to drain into this planted area. And thinking back to some of those earlier images, it's going to allow the water to infiltrate as opposed to be carried as surface water runoff over the road. This middle image is actually from Yukon here in Connecticut. At the bottom of the image is a wet parking lot, and it's made of impervious pavement, so regular asphalt parking lot. As you move up the screen, the parking lot becomes what's called pervious parking. So this is a parking lot where the water can infiltrate. There's more spaces between the asphalt, and the water goes through and infiltrates. You can see the water flows into this pervious parking, and then it stops moving because it's infiltrating, again, going into the groundwater and not being carried as surface water runoff, and it's allowing to go into the groundwater and be treated and be cleaner when it reaches those water bodies. Again, this right image is another instance of where street runoff is collected into a planted area. Again, that's to improve and increase the runoff and make it infiltrate into the ground. Something else that homeowners can do is you can purchase a rain barrel. So rain barrel is just like it sounds like. It's a big barrel. You connect it near your downspout, and it connects to the downspout from the flow when there's a rain event. Right now, your downspout probably goes into your yard, across your driveway, and the water just flows off your property. The rain barrel will act as a collection point. So the water goes into the barrel and stays there. You can connect a hose to it and use it later to water your garden, other things around your yard. And the good news is that Planet New Canaan is actually currently offering a program where you can buy rain barrels at this link for $75, which is a really good deal for rain barrels. They're usually around $125, $150. You can order by May 6th. This presentation will be shared, so you can click on this link afterwards and get more information about how to purchase them and order them. Basically, to install a rain barrel is not very complicated. You cut your downspout so that the spout is actually emptying right into the top of the rain barrel where there's a screen. The water goes through the screen. No insects can pass between that screening, so it's not going to breed mosquitoes in your yard, so that's a great thing. This video is a link of kind of how to install your rain barrel, make sure it's on a level platform, how to cut through your storm downspout, and then how to make sure that the flow is going into this rain barrel. And some things that you want to do with your rain barrel after you buy it, which I know everybody watching this is going to do because they're going to be so inspired to protect their watersheds. You want to make sure that you use the water in your rain barrel so the barrel doesn't get too full. You want to make sure that the screening doesn't get clogged and that the rainwater flowing in and out of the downspout can continue going in. And every year you have to take it in for the winter because we live in Connecticut, so we have winter weather and water freezes. That frozen water will blow the gaskets on your rain barrel. It could crack the barrel, and leaking barrels hold water very well. So you want to make sure you take it in off your downspout for the winter and store it in a garage or a shed. And while you're doing it, you want to clean it out and sanitize it, and if there's any sediment in there, you can clean that out as well to get it ready for the next spring season. Some other things you can do on your property, you can reduce the amount of pesticides and fertilizers you put on. These things are good for controlling pests and weeds, but you definitely want to follow the instructions on those chemicals. More of it is not going to be better. More fertilizer is often just going to run off of your property and go to a storm drain or leave your property, and you're not getting any return on that then. So you're actually losing that fertilizer. And the pesticides, you know, the pesticides have problems. I mean, they're made to kill pests, right? So if they flow off your property, they can harm insects in the water in rivers and streams. They can affect birds and fish in those rivers and streams. And we want those insects because a lot of them are pollinators, like this great monarch in our image here. So, and the fertilizers leaving your property, going into water bodies, can cause something called an algae bloom, which is problematic for something else. Can make your beaches not as pleasant. You know, you have a lot of algae growing, a lot of green plant growth. So it makes it harder to swim in those areas. It can be a negative impact on the things living in your streams and ponds. So again, using less of these chemicals is definitely better. Your local monarchs will thank you for it for sure. Something else that can be done, there's things you can do for your lawn. These are all some links that you can go to learn more about how to get rid of weeds without herbicides. Mowing your lawn less frequently actually makes the grass stronger, encourages it to grow stronger roots in your yard, so you don't have to water as frequently, which can help reduce your water bill, but also keep some of that water in the ground when it rains. And also mowing less frequently, especially in the spring in May, this early spring weather, that helps protect some of the early pollinators and gives them some habitat. So some of those early blooming flowers that might be in your yard allows those pollinators to get a good source of nectar early in the season. So there's a lot of good reasons not to mow as frequently, especially in the beginning of the year, and it just makes your yard a stronger environment. You can also go a step further and put in a rain garden. This is an area where you could have your downspout, instead of a barrel, you have a downspout from your house actually point into an area that's dug a little bit deeper in your property, maybe adding some gravel to improve infiltration. And then you want to plant certain plants like echinacea, which is these purple coneflower, other shrubs and grasses that can like those very wet events from raining and are okay with having wet feet. And then as the water infiltrates away, it's stored in this area and it goes into the ground again, not leaving your property and washing out the end of the street into a storm drain. And we do have a slide at the end of helpful resources. There is a link there that talks about how you can put in a rain garden. It gives some guides of the different types of plants that you could put into a rain garden. And this is actually something that the Southwest Conservation District can help with. You know, we can come to your property, help with planning the size of a rain garden, give you some suggestions for plants that could go into a rain garden, and help you out with that if that's something that you would want to do. And what we've actually done historically, this is an example of a rain garden, a very large one. This would be much bigger than you would need for your house. This is a rain garden at an elementary school in one of our service area towns. This rain garden, I think, drains a 20,000 square foot parking lot. You can see these large rocks are to help reduce the velocity of the flow coming into the rain garden. When we had this put in, it's seeded with different plants that grow, and then we had students from the school come out and help plant some things into it. And then we actually also worked with the science coordinator for the school to develop curriculum to help the students learn about how the rain garden functions. And again, it's capturing that surface stormwater and allowing it to infiltrate into the ground as opposed to being piped into a water body. And the next thing we did here is Melissa, who I mentioned earlier, developed this awesome sign, which is providing educational information about how the rain garden functions. So anybody that goes to this rain garden can see the sign and learn about where it is. And the spoiler alert is this is in the Quinnipiac Watershed, so that information is on the sign. And you can see the boundary of the Quinnipiac, and that star is located in the Quinnipiac Watershed. So this is telling us more about infiltrating the ground and not just having the water flush into the nearby stream, which is actually just on the other side of the trees in this example. Something else that we've done to help keep the water quality higher in our watersheds, more environmental education. We've done work in this instance. This is another town where we're working with high school students to control invasive plants along the banks of the water body near their school. It's Wharton Brook. The invasive plants have problems where they outcompete the local plants. They actually aren't as good for stabilizing the shores and the banks of the rivers. So you get more sediment and erosion in your streams, which is good for our water quality. That sediment makes it harder for fish to swim and breathe in the water, and it actually fills in waterways downstream if it flows into a pond. So we want to control the invasives and then replant this with native plants after we get rid of what's underneath this tarp. Is a plant called Japanese knotweed, and the tarp is preventing the plant from getting sunlight, so it can't grow. And once we get it under control, we'll replant it with more appropriate plantings that'll grow there more favorably and hold that stream bank in place. We also work with the municipalities, so we could work with Kathleen and the Wetlands Commission in New Canaan. This is a project where we were called in to inspect solar panel design. Solar panels, green energy, awesome, great, no carbon emissions. The one thing to consider is that when the rain hits the solar panel, it's an impervious surface, right? So it's going to actually concentrate the flow down the panel. And what happens is at the end of this panel, there's a drip that starts to occur. And if you don't prepare for that and you have slopes, you have the water will actually start to carve out the soil and create little surface streams and carry soil into the nearest water body. So for this project, we advise putting in, this is a small couple inches deep hole filled with gravel. It's called a level spreader. This allows that water to infiltrate in, eliminates velocity from flowing off the solar panels, There's not going to be any surface water flow and erosion carrying off this site. So we're getting all the benefits of green energy and none of the problems with excessive stormwater flows leaving the site. We also do a lot of work with farmers, agriculture producers in our area. We partner with NRCS, which is a Natural Resource Conservation Service, part of the federal government. We go out to farms and help provide assistance with things that reduce, again, soil erosion and carrying some of the soil into the water bodies. Some of that is planting crops in between the crops that are harvested, doing conservation planning, make sure that there's planted buffers, and actually moving towards not tilling that soil every year and keeping it stabilized in the ground by using things like cover cropping and things like that. Again, a lot of the problems from surface erosion, surface stormwater flows, carrying anything on the ground. It could be the loose soil. The loose soil can carry contaminants, pesticides, nutrients into our water bodies. We want to keep our soil in the ground. Getting close to the end. So benefits of protecting our watersheds. Hopefully some of that is clear from some of the things I've talked about tonight. You know, protecting our watersheds and the land use, it improves the water quality in our water bodies, our ponds and streams. We can reduce some of the flooding by increasing that infiltration of surface flows, improves and restores aquatic habitat, improving that groundwater recharge, which is again good to reduce the flooding. All this stuff is connected. We want to allow the water go into the ground and infiltrate into the groundwater before it gets to our water bodies. Improves our neighborhood beauty. There's a lot of studies that show us that having healthy watersheds and lots of open space increases property values in our communities. And in our urban areas, having those curb cuts and those vegetated areas can reduce some of the urban heat island effects. So you're getting the infiltration of the stormwater, but you can also plant trees there. So you get some shade, which cools off those urban areas. This is the helpful resources slide. I'm not really going to go over these. The slideshow will be shared, and you'll be able to see these links afterwards. But it's things from EPA, Yukon Clear for the rain garden, EPA again for pesticides. The Xerxes Society deals with insects, and then Connecticut DEP and the Stormwater Manual, and then of course our own Conservation District resource page. I wouldn't be doing my job if that wasn't promoted as one of our potential resources. I think that's the end of my slides. Pretty much spot on with what I was hoping time-wise. So I do want to thank the New Canaan Library for hosting this, and also thank our host, the Town of New Canaan, Planet New Canaan, and New Canaan Land Trust for sponsoring this event. I'm really glad to be given this opportunity to talk about watersheds. And at this point, you do have my email address here, so definitely feel free to contact me in the future if you have questions. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the questions that have come in.
Chris, I do see one question, and
Yep.
the person is asking, how much does a street side planter cost, and how to get our town to do this along major business district where runoff goes right into the local water body?
Yep. So a lot of that is going to be different depending on the size of the area for putting in that sort of curbside planter. They can range from a couple $1,000s for a tree planter to larger depending on the size and sort of how much curb cutting and what is going to have to be removed from that sort of place to put in a planter. I know that the city of New Haven is actually doing a lot of work with these in some of their areas. I could certainly talk to, I believe that was Joy, who I know. So I could reach out to her and we could talk about getting some estimates for some project work in her community. Looks like there was a second question. What is a water course? Good question. So water courses are the same as a water body or a stream. So basically like a river or stream, it's just another word for a water body. Hope that answers that one. I see a question about Japanese knotweed. Recommendations for treating where tarps wouldn't work. Steep hill along the banks of a creek. That's a tough one. The steep slopes are hard to work in. You may still be able to anchor in some matting over the knotweed. The downside of working on a steep slope is you're going to start to create erosion issues when you lose that planting. Fast-growing native alternatives on some of that sloping. I mean, I could certainly dig into some of that. I don't have a plant on the top of my head right now. So David, if you want to connect with me afterwards, I'd certainly be able to look up some recommendations for you. I don't want to give you the wrong plant off the top of my head, but I know steep slopes is a more difficult place to work with. All right, great. Thank you, David. And Andrew said they can be also handmade for cheaper. And I actually see Jack Clausen with his hand raised. I think I can make him talk if that's okay. Jack, you should be able to unmute now, I think. Maybe not. All right, well, I will leave Jack with his hand raised. There's a couple more questions coming in. Question about knotweed. How long do you need to have the tarps on the surface to completely kill the insidious roots? Ah, yes. Insidious is the correct descriptor there. It can take a couple years, but it is pretty effective. What happens is that the plant isn't allowed to get sunlight, so it's not bringing in more energy into those roots. And so you're draining the energy off those rhizomes and removing those energy stores. So if you have a very large area, you want to watch around the perimeters of your tarping to try to keep those leaves from growing and bringing in more sunlight. It's at least a 2-year project, probably longer, depending how well established the knotweed is. It's really going to be dependent on how long the knotweed has been there and how established it is on your property. I see a question from Christy about how much damage does it do when people put grass cuttings and leaves in a river? This is a big one. Those grass cuttings and leaves are loaded with nitrogen. And as the nitrogen goes into the river, it's carried downstream. It's adding nutrients to the water bodies, which will then start to add potential for that algae bloom, which I was talking about. So you're nutrient loading into your streams, and that's where the algae grows and other things will grow very quickly. So it's definitely not good to put things right into a river. I think most municipalities actually have that as not allowable in their wetlands regs, considering it as fill. So you could also be in violation and receive fines from your municipality. So also a reason to avoid doing that besides the impacts on water quality.
Yeah, if I just might add, Chris,
Yeah.
in addition to the things that you mentioned, the thing that sometimes we see is the landscaping companies or service companies blowing all the leaves directly into someone's pond. That is, artificially filling that pond, and the homeowner is going to be dredging much sooner than they should had the leaves not been blown into the pond. There are alternatives to leaf pickup or disposal. So, just educating your service folks or yourself about what those options are is always a good idea, better for the environment as a whole.
Yeah, great point. That leaf litter, not only is it nutrients, but you're exactly right. It's going to fill in that pond. And honestly, what I do with my leaves at the fall, I just mow them right into my lawn. Then that nutrient is in my lawn and my flower beds for the next spring. So I'm not paying to have it carried off. I'm not having it leave my property. So you just raise the mower up a little bit. Some mowers you can actually get mulching blades to help chop up those leaves for your property. There is another question about the New Canaan Reservoir water going to Norwalk. I don't know the answer to that one. I can't speak to that. I don't work for Aquarian. I could certainly try to research it, but it's not something I know off the top of my head. I don't know the drinking water system well enough to answer that one. Question about runoff from driveways. same as a parking lot or a sidewalk. This is impervious surface, so the rain is going to flow across your driveway and go into the road if your driveway goes down to a road, carrying any rock salt or anything you put on there in the winter, if your car is leaking any fluid. So that runoff on the driveway is similar to a road. It's just probably not going to be as much material because your car isn't on there as often. But any of those paved surfaces are going to behave in a similar fashion. Emily is asking about, are there more specific ways teens can get involved with conservation efforts? Sure. The district is doing a lot of work with schools throughout our service area. We already have 3 schools that we're working with on doing invasive removal projects. And there's a great program called Connecticut Envirothon that we also are involved with as the conservation district, where student teams, high school teams, actually get together and study different content areas like aquatics, forestry, wildlife, and natural resource issues such as could be renewable energy. It could be what to do this year. It's waste to resources. And these school teams actually get together and learn throughout the year. And then in May, we have a competition for all the schools. This year it's May 19th. So if you have a teacher that's interested, we can actually communicate with them and have them come to the event. The winner of Connecticut actually goes to a national competition. So there is opportunities for representing the state and dealing with natural resources and conservation as well. Looks like that might be the last one that came into the Q&A, which as I move that, I can't see. Now I'm back to the chat box. Glad you enjoyed the talk, Peter. David's asking about the region's water quality compared to surrounding areas. That's a tough question to answer. Any water body, so any river, is going to have sections of the river that are cleaner than others. Any watershed is going to have areas that are cleaner than others. Kind of the rule of thumb, I guess, is that where there's fewer people and more forest, if you think back to that land use slide that I showed with the model, the water quality is going to be better, right? Because there's more surface water infiltrating. There's not as much of that pervious surface carrying pollution into the water bodies. Usually the further away you are from developed areas, the healthier the water quality is. There are a lot of clean areas in Connecticut. And there are a lot of healthy watersheds, and of course there are watersheds that do have water quality problems as well.
And I'll just add specifically for New Canaan, we have a variety of environmental groups sampling various sections of our rivers. And so we get water quality reports pretty on a regular basis, and they do alert us to areas that might need some attention, whether there's a problem going on. We'll try to troubleshoot what that might be to identify the source if it's potentially like a failing septic system. So that's ongoing throughout all of our rivers in New Canaan. Emily, I just wanted to let you know that one event that's coming up, and for the folks on the call this evening, what you can do the week of April 17th is we have our annual Clean Your Mile campaign is back, and this is the annual event where we ask folks to help us clean up the towns, the parks, schools, neighborhoods. The chamber works downtown with a couple of groups to spruce up for the spring and get our downtown looking great. So if anyone's interested in participating in Clean Your Mile, the press release is going out and on multiple sites. But certainly you can contact me at Town Hall, and I can give you a location that might need some cleanup, or you might even suggest something to do. So there's additional information on that, but that's the week of April 17th to the 23rd, kind of wrapping around Earth Day.
Awesome. That's a great local opportunity for folks. Thanks for sharing it, Kathy.
Okay.
I didn't see any other questions in the Q&A that came in. As I said that, a big one comes in the chat. Any suggestions on dog owners about picking up after their dogs? City office can help. I live by the 5 Mile pond is not good. Many dog owners do not pick up. So there is signage that you can put up. There's actually signage connected with, you can get a box where you have a roll of dog waste bags in there. So it's creating an opportunity for the owners to actually access a bag. The downside is sometimes they just bag it up and then throw the bag in the pond, which doesn't really help at all. It is a difficult thing, and you know, it's kind of, I know in our neighborhood we walk our dog and we pick up after him all the time. But there is a little bit of a peer pressure thing too. So, you know, it's maybe the best advice is just, it's not always comfortable, but just mention it to somebody, right? And hopefully that can start to make the change. And maybe they're just having signage put up is something else that can be done in that area. I can't speak for the city going in that direction though. So, but those are the opportunities, is just create awareness and education that there are problems. A couple of thank yous. Oh, glad you enjoyed it. Glad everybody was able to participate tonight. Hopefully it was a lot of good information shared.
Good. I recognize a lot of our participants tonight. I want to thank everyone for joining the watershed education this evening. I want to thank Chris for doing a terrific job with the slides and bringing us right down to our hometown here. You know, taking care of the environment is everyone's responsibility. That's how I view what we're all trying to do and improve on what we have to do. So,
Kathleen, there's one more question that came in.
Okay.
I actually
Sure.
don't know that I can answer it though. The question is from Patricia, asking about septic systems and federal money for infrastructure that will extend the town's sewer systems. I don't know anything about any of the municipalities and their plans to extend sewer systems. So that would, I can't answer that, but I will say that in general, sewered areas are better for water quality than a septic area. Now septic systems can operate perfectly well as long as they're maintained and pumped out and treated appropriately, and you know, not putting the inappropriate things down the drain. Your septic system will do its job appropriately and function well. But a sewer system will function just as well, if not better, with less of the personal homeowner maintenance needed, right? So I don't know if that's something that the towns are doing. I know that there is a lot of money coming in to do projects for Long Island Sound through the Long Island Sound Futures Fund, and municipalities can apply for that. So there are opportunities to do some of that type of work and planning, but I can't speak to what's happening in New Canaan or any of the other municipalities.
Certainly, we can have some follow-up if she wishes to contact us at Town Hall. New Canaan does have a top-rated sewage treatment plant that is operating very well. We have a defined sewer district, and then beyond that, we have quite a number of homes on septic systems. And to Chris's point, we do have our septic systems do function fairly well in New Canaan. Also, they provide some groundwater recharge for those areas rather than taking everything offline and putting it through a sewage treatment plant. So there's a balance that has to be struck when you're discussing extending sewers or putting everything on a sewer. But at any rate, if that person would like to follow up with us at Town Hall, maybe we could get some additional information that I'm not actually aware of.
Great. And Kathleen, you made a good point, and I just wanted an example of something to consider is there are some areas that we've worked in where the homeowner is on a groundwater well for their drinking water, but then their property is sewered. So they're actually pumping the groundwater out of the ground and then sending it to the treatment plant. So your point is spot on. You're eliminating that groundwater recharge literally by pumping it into the house and flushing it down the drain. I mean, and that's just the situation, but it is something, and that balance is important.
Okay.
I don't see anything else. Be glad to stick around another minute or two if the other questions come up.
I just wanted to ask if Robin had any additional items to report or say on Planet New Canaan.
No, the only update I'd have to say is we have, with the Pollinator Pathway Group, we do have the Earth Day Extravaganza, which will be on April 23rd at the New Canaan Nature Center. It's there is a 10 a.m. lecture with Karen Bussolini, and then the extravaganza itself will be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Also with the Mayfair coming up, we just want to remind everyone that Mayfair and Planet New Canaan will be there handling the food scrap waste. So there will be zero waste in the, I guess, the Holy Smokers area, where we're going to be collecting all the food scraps, and St. Mark's will also be composting, buying all compostable material. So nothing will go to the incinerator or hopefully end up in a stream anywhere. And that's it for Planet New Canaan right now. Thank you, Kathleen.
And then one other thing, Robin, while we have you, because this kind of goes potentially to keeping things out of the watershed that shouldn't be there. The swap shop, is there any updates on the swap shop at the?
So the swap shop is, we're working on it right now. Tiger Man, who's the director of public works, he's given us an area we need to fix up a little bit, but we will, he actually had a podcast with New Canaanite, which was out today, where he talked about it, but hoping for an opening this summer. So that will be for New Canaan residents who own a transfer station pass. There are 2 levels for a transfer station pass. I believe the highest, if you do not have private pickup, it is $75. If you have private pickup, it is $45. So everyone who owns, once it opens, you will need a transfer station pass. Oops, sorry. And we're hoping this summer will be open. We just need to paint. And when we do call the swap shop, we think that's what we're going to call it, but it's not actually swapping. It's just leaving items that people could use again and people can come in and pick up.
And I understand also going to be looking for volunteers to be staffing it. And I don't know if you'd be able to take some young folks like Emily, who's on the call tonight. I'm not sure what age she is, but I know you'll be looking for
we definitely will. We would love for any high school students, if they would like to come involved, they can always reach out to us at info@planetnewcanaan.org.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're almost at our hour point here. I again want to thank everyone for being on the call tonight and joining us. I hope you learned something new and appreciate your time tonight. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Chris?
No, I mean, I hope, like you said, I hope people learn something and they're inspired to take some action to protect their water quality in their local watersheds. And if people have questions about things they can do, they can always reach out to us at the district for guidance and suggestions. That's our job. So feel free to contact us.
Okay. Kathleen, I could plug one more thing since I've got some people on the line. Sorry, Planet New Canaan, we're also having our native plants sale with Copia Home and Garden. It's April 15th through June 30th. Buy $75 worth of native plants, and $10 of native plants will be donated to New Canaan Nature Center. Obviously, we hope everyone will join the Pollinator Pathway, plant native plants at home, while also helping one of our Pollinator Pathways receive more plants. So thank you. And there'll be more information about that coming soon.
Terrific. That's great. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I think this concludes our program this evening. And again, we appreciate your time. And any questions, follow up, feel free to reach out to me at Town Hall. And we'll be seeing you.
Have a good night, everyone. Again, thank you.
Thank you for